Hey folks, it's Ray at DCRainmaker.com here, and today I've got 19 things to know about the new GoPro Hero 9 Black. Now first up, it's not sponsored in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly about the Hero 9 Black with tons of video footage and comparisons and data and all sorts of good stuff, so you can kind of make up your own decision. Also, next up is the price, and this is not part of the 19 things. This comes in at $449, which is more than in the past, but there's a catch, technically a good catch. If you have GoPro Plus, now just called Subscribe to GoPro, their monthly service thing, you get $100 off the Hero 9 Black, so it makes it basically $350. So that's technically less than in the past. First up though, in terms of new features, is the new screen on the front. Now this is the front-facing screen, very similar to what we saw with the DJI Osmo Action. This allows you to hold out the GoPro like this and see yourself in the exact image on the front screen as well as the back screen concurrently. There's two modes here. There's one that kind of zooms in a bit and it fills up the screen and sort of center weights but crops out the edges. And then there's one that shows the entire picture on this little small square screen, so you got some black bars on the top. My personal favorite is the one that shows the whole picture, so I can kind of see what I'm doing. Framing wise, this is awesome. I know people kind of talk about vloggers and things like that, but I think a lot of us take selfies with our GoPros all the time, and this ensures that I'm not like cutting off things and got the best part of the picture in the shot. Now, one limitation that I've had with this front screen though, is that the frames per second, in other words, how smooth it looks, is pretty limited. It doesn't affect the recording rate, but when I get in 5K mode, 4K mode, etc., it's just really slow looking. So it's like 3 frames per second. 5 frames is what GoPro says. I think that's a bit optimistic. At lower resolutions like 1080p, no problems at all. And again, it does not impact the recording. It's just what you see on the little screen itself. Okay, and a quick note, if you are finding this video useful or interesting or anything at all, just simply whack that like button. It really helps out this video and the channel quite a bit. Next up on the list is the new 5K resolution. In the past, GoPro's always topped out at 4K, but now you got up to 5K 30 here in different modes as well. So you can do it in wide or linear. Linear is when you get rid of that GoPro view, if you will. So it's just kind of a straight clean, just like this shot is right now, clean with no fisheye look to it. And the stabilization is still there as well. So you can go all the way up to HyperSmooth boost mode, which is the highest possible stabilization GoPro has. And it looks pretty silky smooth. You can see some of this footage right here. Now, again, if you want to see all this comparison footage, I've got a comparison footage extravaganza video that's linked up in the corner there or down below or somewhere on the screen right now that has tons and tons and tons of footage side by side on all these cameras, so you can kind of check them out and decide for yourself. You may be asking though, why do you need 5K? And the answer is you probably don't, but it's handy for cropping in. So if you have something that's a little bit too wide, you can crop in and you get quite a bit more pixels. It's pretty substantial. It's not just like a single digit 4 to 5, it's a multiplier when you go from 4K to 5K. And then one kind of neat tidbit here is that you can pull 14.7 megapixel stills from the 5K footage. Here's a still, and then here's a still, both from 5K footage, without even having to take straight photos. But if you do want to take photos, then the Hero 9 has a new 23.6 megapixel photo mode, which is way more than it used to be in the past, substantially more, and it's definitely noticeable. And taking photos, again, I'm just gonna show you a whole montage of photos here of taking on this thing. It is super noticeable. They're super crispy. You can all the way up to another super word, super photo mode, which is kind of all like an HDR sort of effect, but a little bit better executed. And again, all the photos here are all straight off the camera, no tweaking, no nothing, right off the camera itself. Next on the list is 30% longer battery life. Now it's an interesting claim because it's 30% averaged across all the different modes. So some modes have better battery life, some modes have a little bit maybe worse battery life. I'm gonna put all those modes and the battery life on the screen right now. Now from a practical standpoint, this has manifested itself pretty obviously. I've been out for hours and hours out today riding in these mountains around here, and every single time I swap batteries, it was the Hero 8 that I had to swap first, well before the Hero 9. Now, of course, that battery does weigh a lot more. It is also a new battery as well, so the Hero 9 battery is a new chunkier, beefier battery, which is a lot like the Hero 9 in general. It's heavier, and with that came with that heavier battery. Speaking of weights and stuff, if you want to see a full comparison, check out my unboxing video up in the corner there. I've got weight comparisons between all the action cameras and, of course, the full unboxing of the Hero 9 Black. Next up is new cold weather performance, and for that, it's not cold today, but no problems. I've got a freezer, so let's hop in there real quick. So we'll start these first up. There we go. And then we'll get these going here. And everything is all set. Put that on the Netflix and chill. And there we go, on the Cinnabons. Okay, now this guy started as well. And it looks like we've already got a do not start down here, a disqualification by the Hero 8. Won't even start in these conditions. So it's too cold. You can see the Hero 9 there is starting to warm up its screen. Battery low, powering off. Well, that's disappointing. So the Hero 9 that's in the freezer already, basically the Hero 8, it lasted all of 20 seconds longer, but we'll try the ones that are a bit warmer now. We're gonna start them in there and we'll come back later on. So here's the final results of this, and it's pretty darn impressive. We see that same, 30%, almost 50%, I think in this case, carrying over between the Hero 8 and the Hero 9 in the cold. But when it was pre-chilled, when it was sitting there ahead of time, it was dead in arrival. So the next item on the list is the removable lens. If you remember from the Hero 8 Black, a lot of people hated the fact that you couldn't remove the lens. Now you can. Oops, there we go. Done, removed, simple as that. It has a lock system, it locks in there like goes around twice essentially, and that has some interesting implications not only for me dropping on the ground, but also for third-party lenses, and even a first-party lens we'll talk about later on. So the ability for you to swap out lenses if you wanted to, more than just simply like an ND filter of sorts. And of course the obvious as well, if you scratch this thing, you can now replace it. Every other camera up until the Hero 8 had that, so it's really going back pre-Hero 8 to get back to the removable lenses that people enjoy. Next is a minor one, which is that the rear screen has been increased in size, about 16%. You kind of notice it a little bit when I'm using it side to side, and it's definitely way easier to read than the Hero 8 was. Next, there's the new HyperSmooth 3.0, which is essentially taking the HyperSmooth 2.0 and just adding a little more flexibility to it. And it comes in two ways. The first way we'll talk about here is the resolutions and frame rates it supports. It goes all the way up to 5K 30, and it supports all the versions. So you can do boost in everything. In the past, there were some limitations, though GoPro got rid of a lot of those in the last firmware update for the Hero 8, but now boost everything, which is great, whether it's wide or linear or super view, it doesn't really matter, it's all boost all the time. To just show you some comparisons here, this is a whole bunch of footage I have from all over the place, comparing against the Hero 8, comparing against the Insta360 1-inch R, comparing against the DJI Osmo Action, and you can see that there's really no competition. The Hero 9 is without question the smoothest of the cameras in every possible scenario that I've thrown at it, from pretty gnarly mountain bike trails to just driving, everything across the board, it's the smoothest. And with that comes the next new feature, which is horizon leveling. Now you may be saying, hey, wasn't horizon leveling around in the past? It was, but it was in the app. And what horizon leveling does, it makes it so that if you mount your camera slightly off tilt, it'll go ahead and automatically keep the horizon level. And you can enable it in any of the linear modes, and it basically does a great job of keeping the horizon level, as it says. And you're seeing a couple examples of this right now. Now keep in mind, you may not want this for all scenarios. There are cases where you want to show that movement of the horizon, so you show movement of the action that's in front of you. But when you want it, it's great. It's great for those scenarios where you do want to ensure that the camera is level. And this acts as a little bit of backstop in case perhaps you can't get the mount in the right spot, or maybe just you simply forgot to mount it level. Next is the new TimeWarp 3.0. Now a TimeWarp is basically a time lapse where you're going somewhere and the footage is all stabilized and smoothed across it all, as opposed to time lapse is just a collection of photos. In the past, TimeWarp has been great, but it's had one limitation. If you wanted to stop it and go back to real time, where you could talk to the camera and record audio and interact with all that kind of stuff, you had to stop it and change modes and then go to the new mode and start it. It was a big mess. But now it's changed. Here, let me show you. So what's cool with the ability to stop that time warp, or at least pause it, is that I can hit that button on the side, though as you saw there, it doesn't always seem to take, which is a slight bummer, but I can always press the screen, the on-screen option instead, and that seems to take most of the time, but the button is a little more convenient. And then once I'm done talking like this, I just simply hit the button and I go back to time warp. Now again, that might sound like a small feature, but if you've ever done time warps before and wanted to switch into regular mode to talk to the camera about something, you'll be like, this is brilliant. Brilliantly simple. Next is a feature that GoPro started rolling out to the Hero 8 Black just a couple weeks ago, but hasn't quite finished yet and hasn't brought it out of beta into production for all platforms. So it's new here, which is webcam mode. Now this allows you to take your GoPro and plug it into your computer and use it as a webcam in apps like Skype or Zoom or Teams or you name it, OBS, whatever. It's available for both PC and Mac. It's been super useful for me. I've been using it a lot. One, because the quality on this is usually way better than most webcams, and two, I just like the wide perspective. It gives more perspective of the room as opposed to my giant nose on the screen for everyone else. Coming in hot on the new webcam functionality is new and expanded live stream functionality. In the past, you could basically just live stream to YouTube and Facebook, and that was kind of it. Now you can live stream to Twitch as well as GoPro's own platform, which they say has the highest quality live streaming resolution experience out there in terms of bit rates and things like that. Haven't had a chance yet to try that. Maybe I'll give it a whirl, but you can go ahead now and add Twitch to that natively straight from the camera, which is pretty handy. In addition to that, Facebook pages are also supported as opposed to just user profiles from the the past. Next are 3 new features under the Power Tools banner, which essentially graduated from the GoPro Labs this past spring. And the first is Hindsight. What Hindsight allows you to do is to have your camera always recording. Now it's not recording forever, it's just recording either a 15 or a 30-second buffer. So that way you can have it recording in the 15 to 30-second buffer, but it's not until you press that start button that it grabs the last 15 to 30 seconds. This way, if you're doing something that's super repetitive, where you just want that one shot and you don't want like 50 attempts of you failing, then once you get that one shot, you just press the record button, saves the last 30 seconds and everything from that point forward until you stop it. Super useful again for scenarios where you're not really sure if the action is going to happen right then and you don't want to waste a bunch of time. Now, one caveat to that is keep in mind it does burn your battery life at the same rate as recording mode. So you're not burning storage, but you are burning your battery life at the same rate as if you were actually just recording. Now, the next power tool is schedule capture. What that allows you to do is to go ahead and tell the GoPro when to turn itself on and capture something. You can choose any mode you want, whether it be a photo or a time lapse or regular video mode. That's handy primarily for things like sunrise capture or other places where you want to put the camera somewhere and then have it turn itself on sometime in the next 24 hours. Now, I've had mixed luck with this. Sometimes it works great, but I've also had 2 sunrises, like epic sunrises I wanted to get, and the camera just did nothing. It just was like, no, I'm not waking up today. When I went to check in the morning, nothing happened. It just didn't fire. So hopefully they'll sort some of those things out, but it seems like a super cool feature when it does work. Similar to that is duration capture. This allows you to tell it for how long it should record before it stops. So sort of the inverse here, where you want to start the recording, but don't necessarily want it to record like forever and ever and ever. In that case, it may be more applicable to have a USB battery pack attached to it, which you can do. You can just plug it in to the side, USB-C, and you're good to go. Next is one of the new GoPro mods. Now, mods came out last year. Well, they were announced last year, then they were delayed, and they've been delayed and delayed, and still delayed, actually. But there's a new one to eventually delay, which is the Max Lens Mod. Essentially, this allows you to take off this front display right here like this and put a super wide angle lens on it that kind of takes some of the functionality from the GoPro Max camera in terms of having a much wider lens. They can crop in and do a bit more on the horizon leveling itself there. And in particular, there's something called horizon lock, where you can turn the camera 360 degrees around and it'll actually be able to lock that so it looks level the entire time. Now, that mod isn't available yet, so I can't really test that. But if you subscribe to the channel, then you'll be able to see that video as soon as I have that mod in my hands to give it a whirl. What is kind of a neat little tidbit about this, by the way, is that mod has no electronics in it. In fact, it's just a toggle in the menu to enable or disable it. So that means third parties could probably do something similar to that down the road. Next on the list is improved water drain for the microphones. Now, this may sound like something that's kind of minor, which is probably why it's at the end of my video, but it's useful. So this little thing right there below the mode button, it looks like a weird door that you can't open up, is actually designed to be able to drain water faster. So let's try that out. Okay, this is a test of the microphone audio draining. So I'm behind the microphones right now, then here I am in front of the microphones right now talking. I'm gonna go ahead and just dunk it in the water for 5 seconds, and then we'll see how it sounds. So I'm gonna keep on talking. I'm still talking. Now you're listening to the microphone on the screen right now, and then we can keep on talking and see how long it takes for the audio to clear. And I'll keep on talking a little bit longer just to make this a little bit more awkward. Finally, last but not least on the list is the fact that the GoPro comes in its own case. Not like an exterior case, but actually like a traveling case. As part of the packaging, they've tried to get rid of all the plastic on the packaging, and there's almost nothing in their plastic except for some tiny little bag to keep the parts separated. So pretty impressive there, and they wanted to make it usable. So now you get this kind of carrying case that you can use to put all your GoPro stuff in there. So if you like that, awesome. If not, you can gift it to a friend or something like that. Okay, so there you go, a complete look at the GoPro Hero 9 Black. There's no question this is the best GoPro has ever made, though you would expect that as they get better, of course. I also think it's pretty much the best action camera out there. And the thing is that what GoPro has nailed here is the incremental updates each year. And they've also undone the things that really ticked off people last year, like the unremovable front lens cover there. So it's nice to see them kind of backtrack on some things that didn't really work out. Now, of course, the closest I think we got last year was the DJI Osmo Action in terms of a GoPro competitor that got pretty close there in functionality and really prodded GoPro to introduce this front screen that DJI had introduced. But from an overall platform standpoint, There's just so many more features in this, and useful features, not just like throwaway features, but useful things that once you use them, it's kind of hard to unuse them. So I'm pretty impressed with this. Don't forget to check out my full comparison footage reel thing up there in the corner. That's there, as well as an unboxing video and my in-depth review down there in the bottom description there, where I go into excruciating detail on all this stuff. Now, if you found this video useful, simply whack that like button at the bottom there, or hit subscribe for plenty more sports technology goodness. There's still a bit more to come, I think. With that, have a good one.